And a lot of times, if they don't have a compass, they're driving for something that they think is going to make them happy. But if they had a little bit more awareness, they'd know, man, that is not my destination.
I'm here with Jay Papasan, who is the co-author of the One Thing book, which is one of my favorite books on productivity, mainly because it's like, what is the one thing that if you do will make the most difference? And I say that to my team all the time.
Yep. It's simple, right? That was the whole point. And how can we give people an approach that, one, they can just follow every day, but it's not easy. That would be the main thing. You know, like, it's easy to identify the one thing. To stick to it and not get distracted is usually the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing is just to say no to everything else that's not the one thing. I also struggle with that always. But what we're here today to talk about is the core values deck, which came from an exercise within the One Thing where you find your purpose. And the values deck is essentially an exercise to create a compass for your life.
Exactly. A lot of people struggle with the word purpose. Right, it feels heavy, like that feels like this whole other journey. I got to go journal and drink hot tea and maybe go sit at the top of the mountain for a while. And just through experimentation with our team, we just figured out that, people, they can name their values. And if they can't positively name the things that they've really hung their hat on, then the people who know them do, right? What are the things about me that you know that are just always the same? And then for me, I always see it like, what are the decisions I've made in the past where I really regretted them? That's usually an indication that you violated one of these values.
Yeah.
So this was actually very discoverable, and it was very useful. Like when you know like your core values are, you know what direction you should be heading. So Cathryn, we got introduced to each other in 2019. I have a tradition, the Introverts Networking Plan, where I meet strangers on a Wednesday for coffee. And I think Nathan Lotka introduced us, right?
Yeah, also an introvert. So I was like, this sounds great.
I really remember getting together with you there, and at that time you were exploring partnerships, and I was too, so it was kind of cool, and obviously we just wanted to get to know each other. And I immediately was struck that here's this individual who has business skills, like you clearly understood like running a business, but you also, like, you have this art. I mean, you were an architect by trade, so you guys have this precision around creation, and I was really struck by, wow, here's someone who's got the creative stuff and the precision stuff all in one business person, which is pretty rare. So you made a big impression for.
Well, I mean, I'm touched. I read the One Thing. It was one of the early productivity books that I read, and I really liked it because it's a business book, but it also is not just writing. There's like, little drawings in there to get the point across, which is not something common in business books that I really enjoyed as an ex-architect. But I definitely like to create frameworks, and I love creating something physical, but in a way that's like, okay, how does this tool actually help people? And I will build a 3D model of a notebook or of this to figure out, okay, how's it going to be, which is complete overkill, but I like
AutoCAD for paper design. I had no idea, and you were walking me through like this business line, and I can't remember, I don't have it. Yeah, it was the Edison deck. I think it was the first one that I went and looked at, but they're just prompts, like they're prompts to get you thinking, and it's also the physical experience of moving through them.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's not an app, and that's the thing, we've gotten so many things of, why don't you make an app out of this? But I want to get people off of their phone. So it's this idea of like thinking outside the box, which is also your phone. Like put it away and actually like break a brain sweat coming up with ideas, or, having real conversations with people, like going deep with people without you needing to be on your phone. Actually, one thing I'm not liking right now is going to a restaurant and being on the phone because you have to look at the menu.
Oh, that's right. You have to use your camera. And
yeah. And I actually think it like really takes away from like a depth of conversation if you're like, I have to go and like look at my phone.
You know Derek Sivers? So he just wrote a great book called Your Music and People. And I remember one of the lines that I just underlined in there, and he's talking to musicians about business. Says if your friends and family, those first people that hear your music, aren't already sharing it with people, marketing's not going to solve your problem. Right? Don't, like, you get the music good enough that they're sharing it. So Emily comes back, where do I get another one of these? I didn't know that. That makes me super happy.
Yeah, she was like, these were in progress. So I was like, it's in process. I can't go back to them and be like, hey, let's get the early version of your card. You're gonna have to wait. So it worked out really well. And actually, I didn't know my core values before we did that exercise. And then when I learned what they were, it was just, it's almost like things that were foggy were like, oh, that's why I wasn't aligned with this person or this thing, because it was against my core values. I just didn't know why. And now that I know it, it's kind of like a compass where I'm like, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, and it makes decisions easier because of it.
I love that. I mean, that's what the whole reason is for. That was the germ I took from essentialism, which had nothing to do with the core values. It was about a hiring process. But if you knew that something was a 9 out of 10 on this value, you had a pretty good hope. And you just did a few things that validated. When people say, well, how will I know which ones matter to me?
Yeah.
Well, I do think that you see the word and you kind of have an emotional attachment.
Yeah.
But like I look back and I usually think in the past, and for me, I think if I violated it, I'm remembering a regret I had in the past.
Yeah.
And I know this is important to me. That's usually like the first signal.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just think this is something that's like a theme of my life. Like a lot of my stuff. So anyway, you came up with your 3. What are your 3?
Curiosity, integrity, impact.
Impact, and that's the one we share because mine's family, impact, and abundance. And so, hey, there we go. We get along because we both want to make an impact.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I remember when we first sat down and I got my 3 and one of them was curiosity and you were like, oh, I thought one of them would be creativity. And then it made me think, I was like, well, actually curiosity drives creativity and it can drive so much. And I think when people are going through the core values, there's words that can mean different things to different people, or there's one word that could align in several different ways. So it's almost like a little grouping, and then it could be creativity, but I think curiosity to me means the same thing. And so I think when you go through the deck of cards, you'll have other words that mean the same thing. And I also think that being honest with, are they really your values, or are they something that you wish that were your values?
Yeah.
Because I was reading on companies, because sometimes core values for companies are just stuff that they like to think about themselves. Like I think Enron's was like integrity was one of them, honesty. So in some ways it's like your values are only values if they cost you something or you'd be willing to give something up for them.
Right.
And so if you look back on your time and your decisions and you have one core value, you should test it through like, okay, how have I actually showed up this way? Or what decisions have I made to withhold this value? To make sure that you actually are, I mean, you can change values over time, so you could be like, wait a minute, this is what a value is I would like, but I haven't been showing up like that.
Right.
But until you do, it's just something that you like to think about yourself.
It's aspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to meet a new executive in our company, and I asked my son, I said, so what question would you want me to ask? And he didn't know about this product.
Yeah.
But I need to go hug his teacher or something whenever it's safe. But just like I would like to know as a leader what his core values are. And I said, anything else? And I said, well, the same thing you said. Has he ever actually had to sacrifice anything to live them? Because they've been talking about the hero's journey and a lot of those deeper thoughts. And here's this 16-year-old saying what you're saying. I'm like, I didn't figure this stuff out till I was in my 40s. What's going on? But I remember I sat down with this individual and I said, do you know what your core values are? And without hesitation, he rattles them off. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And you got those. And I asked the follow-up question. And one of his core values was family. And I remember he said, yeah, I was an executive in this cheerleading company. I was in charge of like 2,000 stores. I was like on this rocket ship. And then it was like God, family, country, I believe. And he goes, we'd be getting the family, our big family together to go to church, and I would get a call and they'd be calling an executive meeting. And his family would go away from him to this thing he valued while he had to go to the office. And he left. He walked out of this like stratospheric career. And I just remember thinking, well, Gus is going to be really happy with that answer because if you're willing to give up something, right, that the world says you should want for your values, that you know you're on the right track. So if you were going to give this to someone as a gift, what would you say? Put you on the spot.
Yeah. What would I say? I would say use this gift to help you make better decisions and create a compass for your life.
Cool. I love that answer. That's that was ultimately how the exercise evolved, because we were doing it in the context of goal setting. And people, especially at the beginning of the year, they're setting all these lofty goals.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if they don't have a compass, they're driving for something that they think is going to make them happy. But if they had a little bit more awareness, they'd know, man, that is not my destination.
I think when you know like what you value, you can also know what goal it is. Because it's kind of like putting a ladder and climbing up the wrong wall. It's like you get there and you're like, I need to be over here. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I already climbed up this far. Like now I have to go down and like move. And I had to do that when I got out of my career. But I also think that it makes sense. Like if you realize you're not going where you want, the last thing you should do is keep going forward, because you're literally driving
Going faster is not going to help you.
You're just driving further in the direction that you don't want to go. I just read something recently where they were talking about if you're in a career that's aligned with your values, you are happy, and if you're not, you're unhappy, which makes complete sense. And they looked at specific careers, like that one of the happiest ones is geneticists, because the work they're doing every day is for the future and based in science. And the most unhappy careers are journalists, because they go in with these values of like, you know, changing how people see the world or like uncovering stories, but what it becomes is like clickbait. So this new business model of news is completely different and not aligned with the values that they come in with, and their day-to-day is not aligned with their values. And so they are the unhappiest profession by that, and geneticists are the happiest.
That's cool. I hadn't heard that. That's really cool.
So yeah, Core Values deck, it is coming out very shortly. If you want to pick one up, I would highly, highly recommend.